Heyo and welcome to another episode of Pine Harbor County, where we will use and abuse the new operating district mechanic that was introduced in Cities Skylines 2. In the last episode, we built a quaint town north of Woodbine, complete with a few services, farmlands, and a fun use of the grid road tool. If you happen to miss the last episode, then be sure to click on the info card above, or if you're looking for a new Cities Skylines 2 series to binge watch, then check out the entire Pine Harbor County playlist located in the description below. Last week, we took to the polling booths with a question regarding the future of Pine Harbor County after the Economy 2.0 and homeless patches, and 46 of the voters wish to continue Pine Harbor County as is. Thus, we will do so, but I will bring a few items to everyone's attention. So first, we are still struggling to fix our budget after these patches and are plagued with an abundant need for ambulances that I just cannot seem to figure out why. So if you have any theories as to why we are having an issue with our ambulance coverage, please let me know down in the comments. I have already reviewed our coverage, which is honestly phenomenal and honestly also half the reason our deficit is so big. 2, our water pollution, which is at 0, and 3, our traffic, which is adequate for the most part in the areas where we're having the most need for the ambulances. Another reason our deficit is so high is because I do have the tile upkeep option on. Obviously, when we began this series, we did not have to pay for the land we bought, so I was wicked lenient on the tiles we purchased. We have multiple tiles we don't use. I will keep them for now as I have a hopeful strategy to remedy it. That strategy is honestly just to try to build on those tiles and try to increase the tax revenue to hopefully offset the tile upkeep. So we will continue to build for as long as we can, either until 1, our budget catches up to us and we are back in the green, or 2, we run out of money, which at that point I will decide whether we start a new city or just turn on unlimited money to continue Pine Harbor County, kind of just based on how many more builds we have planned for this area. All right, with updates and news out of the way, I am wicked excited about today's build because I was strategically trying to determine a build that would be low cost in the game, but fun to build. Since we recently received props and new detailers items, let's have a episode-long beautifying the build where we will construct a community garden, colonial graveyards, a farmer's market featuring a special signature building, and rail trails for pedestrians or, perhaps our future bicyclists if we happen to get those, which I wicked am excited for the bicyclists to enjoy. All right, I'll stop rambling now, so let's jump right on into today's episode. The first item I want to build today is a community garden. I'm actually pulling inspiration from a town in Connecticut where one of my best friends used to actually live. So basically the town allowed residents to rent or sort of purchase a plot of garden in a community area to plant vegetables and flowers. Honestly, I loved this because at the time she lived in a townhome, and as someone who currently rents, I cannot describe how much I would love to have a small plot of dirt near my apartment to plant my vegetables in and walk home with whatever harvest, my black thumb managed to grow that year. Thus, I want to live vicariously through the game and create a small community garden using the planter props we received recently in the game. So first we have to decide where we wish to build our community garden, and I think I want to build it near our schools here in Woodbine for a few reasons. 1, Woodbine is already known for its gardens and art since we have the custom botanical garden we made a few episodes back. 2, because this area is heavily built with row homes and apartments, I thought it would be the perfect spot for residents who wish to backyard garden but don't have the backyard to garden in. 3, I added this pedestrian path sort of off camera after we built the Pinecrest Junction commuter train station to help increase our public transportation utilization. So I figured this area would be a great place because technically any resident who jumps on the train could come to this community garden via the Pine Harbor County transit system. So let's jump into our first beautifying the build time lapse and begin decorating out this area with a little bit of planters, some surface painter, etc. to create that community garden feel. Alright, so let's explain what we sort of did here. So for starters, we used the sand surface painter to kind of create this dirt walked, trotted path sort of feel to kind of go to each planter. Each of these planters are actually, flower beds, I guess, technically. They're representing a different garden plot for the community. So while I can't put multiple vegetations in each planter, I did choose the stone as I felt it was the most rural in comparison to some of the others, which, felt more inner city. We also found these really nice little greenhouses that actually look like they come as a part of the residential asset packs. So I put a couple of those in for anyone who, wanted to be able to farm all year round, especially since we live on a map that does have winter. Originally, I wanted the pagoda here, or the awning, to kind of act as a sheltered planter area, but it did not quite work out. So you can't put anything under these, unfortunately, not unless you have anarchy or something. So I just turned it into a little sitting area instead, because I did like this. And then tool shed, pretty self-explanatory with some boxes and things around it. Yeah, so I think it came out pretty nice for the most part. If we come down onto a personal view here, I think it just adds so much to this area. Just gives it some depth and dimension. Because, look at that. Look at the row homes behind it with these planters. Who wouldn't want a garden in that? I know I would. And I'm not particularly good at gardening. All right, let's move on to the next piece that we want to build today. Next, let's build some colonial graveyards. And if you're uncertain what that means, a colonial graveyard is a term I have heard in my area of the United States that describes a small cemetery with maybe half a dozen graves at most. These are some of the oldest graves I have ever seen in the United States, one actually being where I grew up, dated back before the Revolutionary War. They are usually surrounded by a rock wall, which is what colonial settlers used to sort of section off plots of land. For the record, it is a rite of passage to actually go running along those walls, fall, and see how many battle scars you could get. Childhood memories aside, I thought the addition of the tombstones located under the nature tab was perfect for this type of build. And because I have a wicked sixth sense of humor, why not build maybe 2 of these? The first location, if I zoom in here, there we go. The first location is actually right here in Pinecrest Junction, where the Pinecrest Junction incineration plant is causing ground pollution and making the residents in this area sick. Again, I have a sixth sense of humor, and no, I did not intend to actually just make a pun just now. The second location I'm actually thinking should be out here in Braeburn, where our need for the ambulances is the most persistent and honestly the most obnoxious. Because again, sixth sense of humor. So, with that said, let's jump into a beautifying the build time-lapse and construct a few of these colonial graveyards with the new nature props that we have. So let's talk about the build a little bit. I kind of went about it in two different ways. This one being maybe a little bit older per se in, and I guess origination. I made it a little bit thicker with trees, and while much bigger than the colonial graveyards in my area, more vegetation was the goal here. And actually, I might even, woo, much further out than I wanted to go. But I think I want to add in even a little bit more vegetation. Where are we? There we are. Just because some of the oldest colonial graveyards in my area do have just so much vegetation. They're not particularly well kept. They're very overgrown. And honestly, that's kind of the charm in them. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if most of the loved ones who are buried there, you know, their lineage has either moved on or simply isn't in the area they're buried anymore. So let's just add maybe, okay. All right, back into our camera here. So yeah, that's what I wanted to do here. For the most part, my rock wall utterly failed, because usually you'd have like 3 or 4 layers of these rocks, and I didn't quite think that through. I forgot, again, we don't have anarchy, so I can't actually stack them on top of each other. So, well, I guess anarchy and procedural items, maybe? I don't know. Either way, I still drew them in just for the sake of the history associated with them. So they're a little lackluster there, but existent. And then if we come back over to Brayburn, I was a little bit more neat with this one, I guess. I did draw in some paths. And I did this because if in the colonial area you lived in a more populated or built up or progressed area, you'd expect to see something a little bit more along this lines. At least in my opinion. I like how this one came out a lot, actually. Maybe a little more modern for my taste than colonial, but again, a lot of it has to do with the vegetation, and I do greatly enjoy this dead tree right here. Because why not? The next detailer's item I want to add was actually a farmer's market, and honestly, I couldn't think of a better spot to place this than Pine Grove, where we have these vast, very large farms, and right here, a perfect little block of commercial area. Now, for this mini build, I want to actually combine the food station signature building, so this one right here, room for all the hungry customers under one roof. It gives us a -1% import cost citywide, +1% attractiveness citywide, and +3 well-being within 1 kilometer. I then also want to combine it with the food stalls right here, found under the park decoration tab. And I think we're going to place it right about here. I think the food signature building can go right here. And we can place the farmer's market right in this area. I don't want it to be too big, but it could wrap around the corner if we wanted. Or we could put it here. Well, let's plop this on in and jump into a beautifying the build time lapse and see how it turns out. The junk cars were obviously not ideal, but I wanted to be able to put in this strip of kind of like a dirt parking lot in a sense for people to park in. And then this is the actual farmer's market area itself. I did play with the terrain a little bit to try to help it out, so we do have some pretty steep slopes right here, but I think it's okay. I mean, for the most part, people wouldn't be driving this, they'd be walking it. Honestly though, these are just wicked well done little assets here. I haven't actually gotten in close on them, but these food stalls were kind of perfect for this. Check out this side a little bit here. So we've got a leafy, we've got a full of food, 2 more leafies, a slightly physic defining asset here. Let's actually fix that a little bit, because those would not be on the slope. But yeah, I think this actually came out pretty nice. Let me know down in the comments if you guys have a farmer's market near you and your favorite part about going to the farmer's market. Alrighty, and the very last mini build we're going to construct today is a rail trail network connecting Pine Grove, Woodbine, Oakside, and Pinecrest Junction. If you're wondering what a rail trail is exactly, a rail trail is a term used in my area where an old railroad bed was ripped up, leaving just a flat expanse. These have been repurposed into bike paths, walking paths, and honestly just a wonderful little path to walk your dogs on. Now, for this, I am going to vary up our detailing patterns a bit. First, instead of using the sand surface painter, I am going to actually use a pedestrian path for a few reasons. One, I am hoping to eventually get bike paths, and then we will just be able to upgrade our existing network so you could actually see, you know, bikes using the paths. These rail trails are heavily used by pedestrians, and while I will not actually be demolishing existing train rail in the game, I do want to emulate the inspiration I'm drawing from as much as possible and try to populate these paths with walkers as much as possible. And honestly, rail trails can either be dirt or paved, depending on the usage, and thus I am going to focus on the mechanical usage for our game's residents. So let's start drawing in these pedestrian paths, and I'm going to decorate the paths with these little cairns or rock piles. Not quite sure what to call them, but these right here, as honestly when I'm hiking I see these all the time to kind of mark the trail, so I thought it would be kind of appropriate to mark them along our rail trails. So let's jump on into a time lapse and start building those out. fact that there is actually somebody walking on this. I'm sort of impressed. So I did quickly off camera decide to add in the sand surface number 2, because I figured why not. It makes sense to me to have a little bit of a sandy buffer amongst the path, because most of the time if you're riding your bike or something down this, your tires are going to rip up any vegetation anyway. Second, we also, if I scroll out here, I did decide to extend it all the way down actually into Maplewood, the forestry area connected to it. So we ended up with quite one huge bike path, because it comes along all the way this way, comes in right near the bus station for Pine Grove, right into the little industrial work stop area, and then also over to the Pinecrest Junction train station, which I'm gotta rename. There we go. And then all the way down into the forestry area, Maplewood. So I'm really actually kind of happy with how this turned out. Let me know your thoughts down below. If we get those bike paths at some point, I will immediately be upgrading all of this. And hopefully the Cities Skylines 2 node count is generous, because this surface painter used up a lot. A lot of it. Okay, so where are you going? So you're from here, and you're going here. Wow, so that's impressive. That's so impressive. Alrighty, everyone. I think that just about wraps up today's episode. Today we abused the new props provided to us in the detailer's patch and created a community garden, colonial graveyards, a farmer's market, and some rail trails for our residents to spice up the area. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to check out the entire Pine Harbor County playlist in the description below if you're looking for a new Cities Skylines 2 series to binge watch. Until next time, I hope everyone has a phenomenal week.